Hello and good morrow to you, and welcome back to Learn the Bible in a Year for January 21st, 2026. That's the date today. And today our Bible reading is Genesis chapter 41, verses 41 through 57, and also Genesis chapter 42. We're also going to be reading today Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 36. And also, we're getting into Matthew chapter 15, but only verses 1 through 9. And then finally, we are reading Psalms chapter 12. Before we jump into the actual recap itself, just a reminder, go ahead and click the follow, subscribe, like buttons, all those good buttons. That really helps the ministry grow, and I really appreciate if you could do that. All right, now let's jump into the recap. All right, we're in the last part of Genesis chapter 41 now. Pharaoh puts Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. He takes his signet ring, which is used to seal official documents, and puts it on Joseph's finger. He dresses him in fine linen robes and puts a gold chain around his neck. In ancient Egypt, these weren't just symbols. The signet ring meant that Joseph could make binding legal decisions on Pharaoh's behalf. The gold chain was a collar of honor given only to high officials. Joseph rides in a chariot as second in command. People shout before him, "Make way." Pharaoh gives him an Egyptian name, which is very easy to pronounce, and it goes Zaphanath Paneah. And Pharaoh gives him a wife named Asenath. I think that's a good name, and so do you, who is a daughter of an Egyptian priest. Joseph is being fully integrated into Egyptian society and power structures. He's 30 years old and travels throughout Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, he collects enormous amounts of grain. It's like sand of the sea. There is so much that he stops keeping record. Before the famine comes, Asenath bears him two sons. He names the first Manasseh, which sounds like the Hebrew word for forget, because God has made him forget all of his troubles and his father's household. The second son is Ephraim, which sounds like twice fruitful in the Hebrew, because God has made him fruitful in the land of his suffering. The 7 years of abundance ends and a famine begins, spreading to all lands. When Egypt starts to feel the famine, people cry out to Pharaoh for food. He tells them to go to Joseph and do whatever he says. Joseph opens the storehouses and sells grain to the Egyptians. The whole world comes to Egypt to buy grain because the famine is severe everywhere. And now we're entering into Genesis chapter 42. Jacob, who remember is Joseph's father, hears that there is grain in Egypt, and he asks his sons why they're just sitting around looking at each other. He sends 10 of them to buy grain, but he keeps Benjamin at home. Benjamin is Rachel's other son and Jacob's favorite now that Joseph is supposedly dead. Jacob's afraid something might happen to him. When Joseph's brothers arrive and bow down before him, Joseph recognizes them immediately, but they don't recognize him. And this actually makes a lot of sense because he is dressed as an Egyptian official. He has a shaved face now, and it's been over 20 years. Joseph remembers his dreams about them bowing down to him, and he accuses them of being spies. They protest. We're all sons of one man. We're honest men, not spies, which is kind of ironic for them to say that they're honest men since they threw him in a cistern and sold him to slavery, but I digress. We are 12 brothers, but one is no more, and the youngest is with our father. Joseph says, "Prove you're not spies. One of you will stay here in prison while the rest take grain back. Bring your youngest brother here to verify your story, otherwise you'll be treated as spies." He puts them all into custody for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph says, "Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you're honest, let one brother stay confined here while the rest take grain back to relieve the famine. But bring your youngest brother to me so your words can be verified and you won't die." They agree and start talking among themselves in Hebrew, not realizing that Joseph actually understands them. They say that we're being punished for what we did to their brother years ago. Then Joseph turns away and weeps. Then he has Simeon taken and bound before their eyes. Joseph gives order to fill their bags with grain, but also to return back the silver that they paid the grain with and give them provisions. When one brother opens his sack at the lodging place and sees the silver, their hearts sink. They are terrified. What is God doing to us? They return to Jacob and tell him everything. When they empty their sacks, each man's silver is there, and they are frightened, and so is their father. Jacob says, "You've deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin? Everything is against me." Reuben offers to put his two sons to death if he doesn't bring Benjamin back alive, which is a great wager unless you happen to be those two sons. But Jacob refuses. Benjamin won't go. If harm comes to him, I'll die of grief. Ooh, we're ending on a cliffhanger today, aren't we? All right, jumping into Matthew, we read Matthew 14, verses 22 through the end of the book, and also chapter 15, verses 1 through 9. After feeding the 5,000, Jesus makes his disciples get into a boat and go ahead to the other side while he dismisses the crowd. After sending them away, he goes up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Remember, he's still mourning the death of his cousin, John the Baptist. And evening comes and he is there alone. And by this point, the boat is far away from the land and it is getting smashed by the waves because the wind is against them. Shortly before dawn, Jesus walks out to them on the lake. When the disciples see him walking on the water, they are terrified. It's a ghost. But Jesus immediately says, "Take courage, it's not a ghost, it is me." And Peter says, "Lord, if it is you, tell me to come to you on the water." Jesus says, "Come." Peter gets out of the boat and walks on the water towards Jesus. But when he sees the wind, he is afraid and starts to sink. He cries out, "Lord, save me." Jesus reaches out, catches him, and says, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they climb into the boat, the wind dies down. Those in the boat worship Jesus, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." They cross over to the land at Gennesaret. People recognize Jesus and bring all their sick. They beg to just touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touch it are healed. Pharisees and teachers of the law come from Jerusalem asking why Jesus' disciples break the tradition of the elders. They don't wash their hands before they eat. This isn't about hygiene. This is Jewish tradition requiring ritual hand washing before meals. It's a ceremonial practice, not really like a health code. Jesus responds with his own question. Why do you break the command of God for the sake of your traditions? God said, "Honor your father and mother, and anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death." But you say, if anyone declares what might have been used to help parents is devoted to God as korban, a gift consecrated to God, they are not to honor their father and mother with it. You nullify the word of God for the sake of your tradition. So these are the words of Jesus. I'm not going to go into detail about what korban is. I do a full episode on this on the channel, so you're welcome to go check that out in my episode on Matthew chapter 14. But in any case, Jesus is just showing these Pharisees that they are, in fact, hypocrites. They do not follow the word of God, they follow their own traditions instead. All right, finally, we read Psalms chapter 12 today. David cries out. Well, that sounds pretty familiar. He cries out in most of the Psalms. He says, "Help, Lord, for no one is faithful anymore. Those who are loyal have vanished. Everyone lies to their neighbor. Their flattered lips speak with deception. May the Lord silence all the flattering lips and every boastful tongue. Those who say, 'By our tongues we will prevail, our lips are our own, who can master us?' Then the Lord speaks. Because the poor are plundered and the needy groan, I will now arise. I will protect them from those who malign them. The words of the Lord are flawless, like silver purified in a crucible, refined 7 times." And then David makes an emphasis about how the word of God is pure and that it is trustworthy. Alrighty, we're going to jump into our questions today. Before we do that, a quick word from our sponsor. Our sponsor is Covenant Security Equipment. Covenant Security Equipment is a Christian-owned company that provides building contractors with materials. These type of materials are bullet-resistant windows, secure transaction systems, drive-through installations, basically everything a building contractor would need if they're building with safety in mind. There's so much more than just this on their website, so go ahead and head over to covenantsecurityequipment.com if that is of interest to you. All right, jumping into today's questions, just a quick reminder, the questions are all available at the Learn the Bible in a Year workbook. You can get the digital version of the workbook totally for free. The link to that is in the show notes. You can also get the paperback version, which is the kind that I like to use. The link to that is also in the show notes. And here are the questions for today. From what we read in Genesis, Joseph rose to power from a prisoner in one single day. So here's the question. How does Joseph's story encourage you to trust God's timing when you are in prison, air quotes, for a season? Question number 2, from what we read in Matthew, Peter walked on the water when he kept his eyes on Jesus, but he began to sink when he looked at the waves. Here's a question. What waves are you focusing on instead of keeping your eyes on Christ? Question number 3, from Psalms 12. David laments that no one is faithful anymore and that everyone lies. Here's the question. When you are surrounded by dishonesty or compromise, how do you maintain your own integrity? How can you be in the world but not of the world? And what is my main takeaway for today? That is question number 4, the same question we have every day. My main takeaway from today is Peter, when he got out of the boat. When he was looking at Jesus, he walked on the water with no problems. But once he started looking at the waves, he started to sink. Just a reminder that the only way we will have any sort of what could be called success in this lifetime, which is to spread the gospel to all nations, we just need to look at Jesus. There are so many things happening all around us that can take our attention away from Jesus, but Jesus is the source of light. So we need to be looking at him. And that's a lesson that Peter had to learn that day as well. All right, well, that's the end of the recap for today, and I will see you all again here tomorrow.